Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda.
And I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep.
We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, everyone. Today, we have another spooky travel for you. And this time, we're going to the Millennium Biltmore Hotel, which is located in Los Angeles. Recently, I had the opportunity to actually stay there. We went for a concert. I found the spookiest place I can, of course.
Of course.
We stayed there for 2 nights, and now I'm obsessed. Like, I cannot wait to go back because I'm sure I'm going to, learn more and see more and just, I'm obsessed with this building. It's so cool.
Yeah, the photos you showed were really just stunning. Also, that's one of the things that Amanda did during our little break.
Yes. I got to go to Motion City Soundtrack, my favorite band, and then stay in this gorgeous hotel that everyone needs to see. I can't wait to post all the pictures.
Yeah, that was the first time you'd seen that band live, right? Just like the first time?
Yeah, like the first, maybe the 100th time?
Top 50? Top 50 times you've seen them?
Yeah, it was. They played my favorite album, so I was very excited.
Love that.
What'd you do during our break? Anything exciting?
I suddenly blank on everything I've been doing for the past 2 weeks. Just living. Nothing new.
No, tell everyone about the cutest dance recital that's ever happened in existence.
I couldn't remember if it had happened before we had taken our break, but my niece had her first dance recital. And it was the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I sent Amanda the video. She's like the little leader. She's 4, by the way.
She is.
It's like it was a ballet class, and there were people in the wings doing the dance. So they could see them, but the other little girls were looking to her for what to do, which I was like, maybe. But
she did so good.
Of course, I cried immediately, just bawling.
She was perfect. I loved it. I watched every second of it, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cute.
She is perfect. She really is.
Well, now that we're back, this is the first time we're recording since we've been back. So
yes,
we hadn't talked in a while. So we talked for an hour before this.
You were like, we're going to start recording. And then 2 hours later, we're like, okay, I guess it's time to record. We don't always do that anyway.
I guess we will. Let's talk about a creepy hotel. Well, this hotel is not only super spooky, but it has a really interesting history behind it. And it kind of encompasses all of our subjects, right? We have true crime, we have weird history, creepy history, a little bit of both. And then also our favorite, it has ghosts.
We like ghosts? What?
Sometimes.
Just sometimes.
Sometimes when they don't try to follow us home.
Yeah, fair. Also, this is the first episode, the first episode we've recorded since Velisca's been out.
Yes.
Which was such an adventure in editing.
Oh man, yes.
That we needed a full 2 weeks away. Also, Moo's already begun snoring. So top of the episode, we've got animals. They're making sounds.
Mm-hmm. And now I will have my fan on during recording because it's 110 plus here, because I live in hell. So for the summer.
Clearly Amanda's just a princess.
I need a fan. I'll die.
So Amanda's in a tank top. I am in pants, leggings, a t-shirt, and a flannel with shoes on because our basement's fucking freezing.
What is cold? What does feeling cold feel like?
Cold in the summertime, baby.
Rude as hell.
Anywho, okay. So this is the Millennium Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. That is a mouthful, and I will not be saying it. What I will be saying is the Biltmore. But please assume that it is the Biltmore in Los Angeles, and it is this hotel. Because again, I'm not going to say the Millennium Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles every time I say it. So
perfect. Love it.
The Biltmore opened on October 2nd of 1923, which is our podiversary, by the way, and it celebrated its centennial last year. How exciting. So when it originally opened, the name of it was the Los Angeles Biltmore, and it was the largest hotel west of Chicago, which I feel is not very difficult in 1923.
I mean, yeah.
And then it was built in 18 months and cost $10 million, which is a lot for that time.
Yes.
And it was 11 stories tall with 1,600 rooms. Now it only has about 683 because it was how it's been reorganized, but it does take up a half of a city block.
It's big.
Yeah. So Schultz and Weaver designed the building in Beaux-Arts style with Renaissance revival touches. And I need you to know that that's spelled Beaux-Arts So I looked at no less than 3 sources to verify how it was pronounced, because I was like, what? But so it's Beaux-Arts style with Renaissance revival touches is how it was designed. And the meeting rooms were designed with a mixture of European style, including Renaissance, Baroque, neoclassical, and Moorish. And then additionally, Italian murist Giovanni Smeraldi decorated many of the banquet rooms. He actually spent 7 months painting the ceilings. Wow.
It's wild. They're so pretty, though.
I mean, the good thing is that like typically that kind of beauty lasts so long as there's not any like major disasters.
Right.
And the Crystal Ballroom specifically was one of Smeraldi's greatest accomplishments and personally his, quote, most satisfying artistic endeavor. Love that for him.
Right. And so the lobby has been moved since it first opened, but the original lobby is where the Rendezvous Court is now. And I sent Lindsay a few pictures and I'll post a few, but this is gorgeous. It has 24 karat gold accents, and there's like this gorgeous staircase that leads up to it, and there's this really pretty clock at the top, but you can go have lunch there or dinner there and just sit around looking at the art, essentially. Like every piece around you is art. The
I love that.
walls, the ceiling, everything. When I was there, anytime we came back to the hotel, I walked around this area like no less than 10 times during my 2-night stay, and each time I would find another detail as I was wandering. So just so pretty.
I love that.
The hotel's bar is a reproduction of the Royal Hall, where Queen Isabella first heard of Columbus's discovery of America.
Oh no. Queen Isabella. Didn't we just talk about her?
Not that we're a fan of Columbus.
Or her.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We
That's
literally,
true.
yeah, that's funny. Not funny, but like it's interesting that we just talked about her.
You're right. It hasn't been that long, has it?
Bam! I'm a history scientist now, baby.
Yeah. So I wasn't able to actually go into the bar because there's a private party the whole time we were there. But once the party had ended, I got to like peek in there, and that also was really pretty.
Mm-hmm.
The pool or gym area, it's like all one big area, and then the pool has its own like little door to go in.
I was like, so help me God, if you make me work out with people who are swimming, like all I'm picturing is like a treadmill next to the pool. I'm the entertainment.
Like you can see in it.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't
Yeah.
like that. Separate.
Not my favorite, but it is in a lower level. And the cool thing about the pool is it's inspired by Roman baths and the glamour of 1920s ocean liners.
So like the Titanic, if you will.
Yeah, it's so like it's weird, but it's really cool looking at the same time.
Mhm.
And also, a lot of people have probably seen this pool because the scene from Cruel Intentions was filmed there.
Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, that pool. They haven't changed a thing. Like it looks identical to that movie. So when the hotel opened, there was a giant party, and it included 3,000 people with several big names like Jack Warner of Warner Brothers, Mary Pickford, who's an actress, producer, screenwriter, Cecil B. DeMille, the filmmaker, actor, and then Peggy Hamilton, who is a designer, editor, and socialite, with many, many more big names. The party was very fancy, and guests were served a 7-course dinner. There were 7 orchestras accompanied by something I hadn't heard before, accompanied by singing canaries.
I say this with so much love. So help me God, do not make me listen to a fucking bird inside of a structure. Like,
Right?
please. I don't ever want it. I do not ever want it.
I didn't understand what that meant. I was like, what do you mean? Because some of them just said accompanied by canaries. And I was like, is that something that I'm not understanding?
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking bird. No. It was birds. There were birds.
Can you imagine, like, presumably they're drunk, right? Because it's like the 7th course. Okay, see, I'm imagining that the canaries were like the ending, like final act, but it probably was that the canaries were singing along with the orchestras. That sounds terrible. I have a headache just thinking about it. Like that sounds truly awful.
So you don't want that at your next birthday party.
No. Absolutely not.
But it's fancy.
I've brought trained birds to sing to you. What if you didn't?
I'm just thinking our last episode before this one, you were talking about how the birds were loud as fuck.
Oh, yeah, I was.
You know what? You can market that then
Perfect.
to orchestras.
Airbnb. I have singing birds in my fence, possibly. But this is a tangent. But leave it an episode proper because it's about birds.
Okay.
When Ben and I were getting married, He proposed in December, and then in January there was like a wedding expo that I went to with my sister-in-law, and while we were there was this guy who had a little table set up, and he had an owl that was hanging out, like he was holding the owl, and his name, free advertisement for him, was Dan the Birdman. And of course I fucking called Dan the Birdman because, well, first off, I was intrigued. But secondly, because for a mere $500, you could rent a falcon to deliver the rings. And how it would work is that, well, first off, the best man would get a free falconry class, and they'd be wearing a glove, and they would act like, I forgot the rings, silly me. And then the falcon would come in, and the best man would have to put the little glove on, and it would land on their arm, and then the rings would be there.
Okay.
And he was like, apparently it was like buy one, get one half off. So once you got the falcon, you could get a sloth, you could have a wombat, you could have a fucking flamingo, you could have whatever animal you wanted to rent for your wedding. We eventually obviously didn't do that, but I was fascinated by Dan the Birdman.
I'm so disappointed. I was like, where are those pictures?
No, there was no birds in our wedding. Partially because I was like, that feels like I could spend that money elsewhere. Feels like a big expenditure for unnecessary birds. But I do think that I would have loved Ben's face if a bird just like came fucking swooping in with our rings.
Yes.
Be like, why? And I'd be like, Dan the Birdman, great salesman. But anyway, back to the Biltmore.
Yes. Back to this fantastic opening night.
Yes. With the birds.
With the birds. So another person that was there, we said Peggy Hamilton. Well, her dress that she wore that evening is still on display at the hotel. And she called it the Biltmore. And she even designed it with some of the designs from the Crystal Ballroom. It's so pretty.
Oh, I love that. Like, we're really fucking coordinated.
Yes. And I guess she wore it a ton. Like, she kept wearing it. And she was like super photographed and all over the place. So it was like free advertising for the hotel too, because she just like loved the place.
So, I mean, in case you didn't figure this out yet, the Biltmore was the fucking place to be for any big social event or entertainment gathering. And it helped establish downtown LA as an entertainment hub in the 1920s and 30s. And so also in the same year that it opened, 1923, that was the year that Disney arrived in California and the Hollywood sign was built. So I feel like it's like this very old Hollywood, like when you think old Hollywood, it's the Biltmore.
Yes. Yes.
So again, 1923, this is during Prohibition, and it had a speakeasy inside the Gold Room. Now, the Gold Room is still one of the several ballrooms in the hotel. And when Amanda was there, the employees told her that there are several parts of the Gold Room that haven't changed at all. There are big gold bars outside of the room, and that was used to slow down police and keep paparazzi out during the gatherings, and those are still there. Mm-hmm. Also, Amanda met an employee in the lobby named Vishal, and they explained that inside the ceiling there was a hidden room, and that there's also secret ceiling rooms in several of the other ballrooms. And during Prohibition, Al Capone would frequent this particular speakeasy, and it was also one of his favorite restaurants. So while there, he would often place one of his guys up in the hidden rooms so they could look out for police. And what's interesting is that this is not the first time I've heard of a hotel having a secret ceiling room. Like, I think that was actually like common practice for speakeasies. We'll cover it. Like, there's a local hotel that Ben and I went to a ghost tour for. And when Amanda comes back to Baltimore, we're going to take her there and then we'll do an episode on it. But they also had a ceiling room, which I thought was interesting.
I love this one too. Mm-hmm. Like, I sent Lindsay a picture. I was like, look at this hidden room. It's so cool.
Fucking love it.
But another story that I was told is that sometimes some of the people that would frequent this speakeasy restaurant, they would have a hit out for someone. And so the hitman would be up in the ceiling room. They would shoot the person and then they would leave and no one would even know what just happened. Just all of a sudden they'd hear a shot, someone's dead, no idea where it came from.
I feel like I would be like, I don't want to stand near the secret ceiling room because sometimes that means you're dead.
Right? Well, and the ceiling room is up in the corner of the room. So like you could see a big space of that room at that time.
Yeah.
And it really did remind me of the Elms Hotel too, because remember how they had that glass room where people could look out on both sides of the hotel in case police were coming? On top of that, it was like the Elms Hotel because it also had a secret tunnel so that people could leave if the cops showed up. And I got to see this tunnel. The tunnel's still there. So it looks like a fake door, and you open it and then there's, the little tunnel. And from what we saw, any patrons of the speakeasy could leave through the tunnel and escape onto Olive Street. And Olive Street, that exit has since been sealed. But I was trying to be best friends with everyone that worked there because I'm like, please tell me the secrets of this hotel. It's so cool. One of the guys named Eduardo was super nice and he showed me the tunnel. So he's like, here's what would happen. He said that Capone wouldn't use the tunnel necessarily to go to Olive Street, that he had another little area where the tunnel connected to the elevators, like the elevator area, so that he would just jump on the elevator and then he'd go hide on the roof.
Smart.
Now, I couldn't find anywhere online, but he was like, he was showing me. He's like, it would go here, it would go over there towards the elevators, and it is in that direction. So I thought that was really cool that he kind of had his own little area.
I would also imagine that if there were 1,200 rooms, he could also just go up to a fucking room. Because what are they going to do? Search every single room every time they go to the hotel? Probably not.
Probably not, no. But I just thought it was, interesting that he had another way out. I wasn't able to go in, obviously. But Eduardo explained, he's like, he would go to the elevator area and then he would take this little staircase up to the roof. And he'd just sit there. He could see when the police cars were leaving. And then he'd be like, okay, time to go back down. I can finish my dinner.
I love that. Love that for him, I guess.
So he also shared with me, along with a couple other employees that wanted to remain anonymous, that there are various tunnels under the hotel as well, and that they lead to other buildings in the area. And there's also, on top of that, secret passages hidden inside the hotel. And they were used for various reasons. But one that I thought was really interesting is that some of them were used for people to take pictures. And so paparazzi and things like that, they could do it, not be seen, and then they could use these pictures for blackmail purposes later.
That's very interesting because I think that when you think of a place that has secret corridors, hallways, spaces between the rooms, anything like that, you kind of think of a seedy motel, right? You don't think of this fancy, glamorous hotel. You think of some place where it's not going to be quite so lovely. So it's interesting that they were built into it because, obviously, they were there,
Yeah. And there's tons of articles about the underground tunnels that connect many of the buildings in the area. Some places were even using them for a while just for their employees to get around easier. And think of Disneyland, right? But since then, I've seen a few articles that say that they've been closed. But some places are but you can get in here. So I don't know. I wouldn't really want to go into an underground tunnel under a building there. But the hidden passages sound interesting.
Especially not in a place where there's earthquakes. I would also just venture to guess that there's not a ton of maintenance that's been happening in them. And that for them to meet codes today, they would need to do more work on them. Just sounds like a liability issue to avoid.
Yeah. So within the hotel, many big awards, celebrations, and historical events happened. And so one of them was the party for the opening of Grauman's Chinese Theater, now called the TCL Chinese Theater. That was actually held at the Biltmore. Peggy Hamilton, who we talked about earlier, held tea time fashion shows in the ballrooms. And these became really big social events and attracted a ton of movie stars. And something about their tea time thing is they still have it on the weekends in the Rendezvous Court.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the evenings that we came in, it was closed, but if you were staying there, you could walk through it. And they were doing a photo shoot of a tea time. And they were in these elaborate gowns. It was so pretty. I can't wait to see where it's published, but it was gorgeous.
Have you ever been to afternoon tea?
I have not, no.
My mother has hundreds of teapots and is very into afternoon tea. So I've been to a few.
That's so cute.
It's lovely.
You'll have to go here. They have it every weekend and they decorate it. It's so pretty. So in 1927, some of the first organizational meetings to create the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, or AMPAS, was held at the Crystal Ballroom. So they had the first meeting there to create it. And the Academy Awards was hosted in 1932 to 1942. Also, it's rumored that the first sketch of the Oscar statue was done on one of the hotel napkins by MGM's production designer, Cedric Gibbons.
That's very interesting.
So a lot of the award shows that we see today were born there.
Yeah, I find old Hollywood very fascinating in terms of just from a historical perspective and how studios used to work because it's so different from today.
Yes. In the hotel, they have this hallway of history, I guess, and it has a lot of pictures from the award shows. And a lot of people say it gives them the Shining vibes. like the party.
Oh, yeah. I could see
Because
that.
when you're looking at these old pictures, it's very interesting.
It's also like a similar vibe of when you're thinking of 1920s to 1940s glamour. It's a very particular vibe,
Yes.
especially if you're thinking like high society type of glamour.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 1940s, soldiers recovering from fighting in World War II were hosted in the military's rest facility, which is on the second floor of the hotel. The hotel also hosted several presidents, including Kennedy, Truman, Roosevelt, Carter, Ford, Reagan, Bush, and Clinton. In the 60s, the Beatles even stayed there in the presidential suite. When fans found out that they were staying there, it was actually impossible for them to get into the hotel. So they had to get into the hotel via a helicopter that landed on the roof.
Not wild.
Wild. And then just as another little interesting tidbit of history, the bar inside the Biltmore, the Grand Avenue bar, was part of what was called the Run. And the Run was several bars, parks, and hotels that were fairly close to one another that were known for the LGBT community to hang out together. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the LGBT history with the Biltmore, but in 1970, the American Psychiatric Association's Behavior Modification Conference was hosted at the Biltmore. I already want to like punch someone, you know, just even thinking about this, but let's continue. So the APA is the association responsible for classification and diagnosis of psychiatric illnesses. So if you're thinking of like the diagnostic criteria of like, what is depression? What is anxiety? What is bipolar disorder? So over the years, there have been several DSM versions and there's been additions and removals. But as of 1952, which was the acting version at that 1970 conference, the DSM listed homosexuality as a mental disorder. And the intention during the conference was to endorse electric shock therapy as the, quote, official cure for homosexuality, which is fucking wild.
It is. It's horrific.
It's wild to consider. I mean, shock therapy is horrific in and of itself, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But to say, especially for sexual orientation, like truly get fucked. But so Dr. M. Philip Feldman made a film making the case, and while it was being shown, it was interrupted by a group from the LA chapter of the Gay Liberation Front. And so the film's playing, and it showed a gay man being treated, quote unquote. And one of the members of the Gay Liberation Front yelled, "Are we going to stand for this shit?" And then the other members, who were kind of interspersed throughout the audience, stood up and screamed, "Hell no." Then they stormed the stage. And this became known as the Biltmore Invasion. So one of the members of the Gay Liberation Front was Carolyn Weathers, and she has done many interviews describing what happened that day. And she said that after taking over the stage, they not only stopped the film from being shown, but Weathers and the group made the audience of the film sit with them in small groups to talk, which I fucking love, right? Fucking civil disobedience. Love it.
Yes.
Disruption. Sometimes you need to be disrupted so that you can hear someone.
Yes.
Friendly, polite protests aren't effective. They just aren't, which it sucks. You shouldn't have to scream and interrupt and be unpleasant in order to be heard, and yet it is the truth of protest.
Well, yeah, if you look at history.
Yes. But anyway, so this allowed the Gay Liberation Front and the APA to actually have real dialogue with one another. It is said that this may have been one of the first times that the APA had really heard the experiences of LGBTQIA people. And so 3 years later, in 1973, homosexuality was removed as a mental disorder. And I think it's also really important to note that when you're thinking of LGBT history and how it was viewed in society, it's so often ignored that it was more secret and sneaky than you might think, right? Because I remember when I was like a youth, I was like reading some listicle about like, oh, weird laws that still exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw like an anti-sodomy law, and it was like, in these states, it's still illegal to practice sodomy. And I was like, I say youth, I was like in my teens, right? And I was like, how weird that these places don't like this particular type of sex, not realizing that what they meant was not heterosexual sex. They didn't mean like particularly butt stuff. What they meant was anything that wasn't straight people.
Yes.
So it's not just that people were like, oh, like LGBT people are mentally ill. Oh, this is deviant. It's that it was literally illegal in some places in the US
for a while.
And people were being arrested and beaten and structurally oppressed.
It's sad. I went off in a couple rabbit holes about this and read about Carolyn Weathers' life. And she was incredible. Her and her sister Brenda did so much for various communities. And I believe her sister was even arrested at one point for being a lesbian before they moved. It was wild. But her life is just something that I was like, I'd never heard of her. And now I'm like, she's like one of the coolest people. She should be talked about. But the city of Los Angeles also presented her with an LGBT Heritage Award for her activism in 2015. So I love that she was finally celebrated, right? Like for everything she had done.
Yeah, I like that.
But wild. I had never heard of the Biltmore invasion before, but then I saw a couple like case study things on it.
Mm-hmm.
And like a teacher has it online of like how they teach it. And I was like, oh, I want to read all of these. So I have like a whole list of articles and books that I want to read now.
It's fascinating how often the people who are making rules about a particular group of people have never really sat down and listened.
Yes.
And when you think of mental illness within like the LGBT community, I feel like today it is more considered trans people, where people have that incredible misunderstanding of trans people and therefore assume mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find fascinating is that often the people who have the biggest opinions about trans people are not aware, either one, have not met a trans person in their life, or two,
Yes.
were not aware that they met a trans person.
Yeah.
And they have these big opinions, but they've never met someone and they've never had that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And well, first off, you do not need to meet someone to have basic common decency and fucking respect. Two, you do not need to understand another person in order to see them as a valid human and worthy of respect. But I just find it fascinating that anyone thinks that it makes sense to make rules or have big opinions about someone who they've never met.
Agreed. And that's for anyone. Like that's going on today.
Oh,
and, like
yeah.
laws and things too. Yeah, it's horrible. But just thought, yeah, be nice to people.
Yeah.
Pretty easy. So moving on from that, but I thought that was just like interesting history that's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
But after all the award shows left the hotel in the late 70s, the hotel actually closed for a time. And it was even at risk for demolition, which I'm like, how could they demolish all of the art?
Yeah.
Luckily, architects Gene Summers and Phyllis Lambert saved the building and they purchased it for $5.4 million.
So less than it was even built for.
Yes. Yes. And then they spent around $30 million refreshing and modernizing the hotel.
Oh.
Then again, it was sold in the 80s and the new owners purchased it for $75 million, but they ended up spending $135 million to bring the hotel back to its original glory. And I will say that they did a really good job because, you know, sometimes with these old hotels, they like modernize it so much that it loses its original feel.
Yeah.
And like character, but that did not happen here. It still has all of its original character, Hollywood feel, all of it, but it does have some like clean and modern touches in between.
Well, especially because I feel like hotels that are built more recently, people are like minimalism, and that is obviously not the same as old Hollywood, right? So it's good that they weren't like, we'll make this a minimalist hotel and like paint over the 7th month mural, you know, on the ceilings.
Yes, yes. And there's angels hidden throughout the hotel too, for the City of Angels. It's just so cool. If you spend some time there, you can even just like walk through the lobby and their main hall area and you'll see so much cool art. But because it's so pretty, the hotel has been the backdrop of many films, TV shows, and even music videos. You may have heard of one of these guys. To name a few, Ghostbusters has done some scenes there. Beverly Hills Cop, I already said Cruel Intentions. Oppenheimer, Grey's Anatomy had an episode there. The Golden Girls, New Girl, just because I just finished it again for like the 3rd time.
I do love New Girl.
One of the wedding episodes was there. And then if you've heard of this artist, Taylor Swift, she did a little video called Delicate there.
Just a little artist named Taylor Swift.
You know, may not have heard of her. I showed Mike the video while we were there. And he's like, oh my gosh, I know where every scene of this was done.
And now Mike's a Swiftie. This is what did it.
Swiftie. Also, one of the employees there was telling me that Michael Jackson, his documentary movie thing that's being filmed, just finished some scenes there a couple weeks before I was there. I don't think he could say too much, but he was like, I love that people film here all the time because then they're so nice to the employees, like the film crews, and we'll be able to see some of the scenes.
I love that.
He couldn't tell me much, but he was like, it's so fun that everything films here. But the list goes on and on. There's like, if you go to IMDb and look at the filming location, there is so many places, like Wedding Crashers had a few of the scenes there. Just tons of movies.
So it's iconic.
It is. It is. Also, we're going to get into the spooky factors in a bit, but its spookiness is also said to have inspired Disney World's Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, the ride. So now that we know the history, let's talk a little bit about some of the true crime there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a case no one's ever heard of, ever.
Never.
No one's talked about
No
it.
one's heard of this case.
Little known.
Right. So we're going to talk about it briefly because, this case might be known by some, but Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, was last seen alive at the Biltmore Hotel. And we have mentioned her once before in our Cecil Hotel episode, or Stay on Main Now, but we didn't really talk about what happened to her. So just briefly.
It's interesting because I didn't remember that there was a connection between her and the Biltmore. Like, it's not as though when I hear the name of the hotel, I think Black Dahlia. It's probably a good thing for the hotel, but it's just interesting. It's not like the thing that you first think of when you hear about it.
Right. But they are supposedly, I don't know, but they are the first place to do the Black Dahlia drink, I guess. It's like on their menu. I think I sent you a picture. I was like, this seems kind of mean.
Yeah, don't love that, but...
Yeah, but they lean into it. And they do have a big picture of her in that hallway with the history. They have a really big, like, framed picture of her.
Okay.
But she was only 22 when she was killed. So let's talk a couple facts about her. So she was born on July 29th of 1927 in Massachusetts to Phoebe and Cleo Short. She was the third of 5 daughters. And as a kid, Beth developed a passion for the cinema. As a teenager, she wanted to be an actress.
When she was just 19, she headed to California to stay with her father. And I thought this was interesting because she did this even though he had abandoned the family when she was just 5. And the family had actually thought that he had died, but then he just showed back up years later.
Isn't that weird?
Weird.
Such a strange story.
Yes. She was an aspiring actress, so California made sense, but she also wanted to reconnect with her dad. And just as a note, often people talk about Elizabeth Short being an aspiring actress, but that actually might be incorrect. Some sources claim that is true, but there are several that say that there's zero evidence of this because she didn't go on any casting calls and there's no headshots. There's no proof that she went to classes. I think that a lot of people just think that because that was why everyone moved to California. So why else would she go there? Even though it could be that she just went there to see her dad.
Right. And she may have liked, like the thought of being an actress is pretty common to like many teenagers and many kids.
Yes.
But she may have liked it, but not necessarily wanted to be it. But almost every source says yes. But again, I have not found any evidence that for sure she was there to try to act.
I would also imagine because she was pretty, people assume that as well.
Yes, she was gorgeous.
So she actually didn't stay with her father long and ended up getting in trouble for underage drinking and then left California to live with her mother for a bit. She then went to Florida, then ended back in Los Angeles in the July of 1946. When she returned, this time, she was there to visit an acquaintance from Florida who was in the armed service, but not necessarily to become a movie star at this time. And again, we've seen different accounts of why she was there. She worked as a waitress, and some sources say that she moved around quite a bit, renting rooms, staying in hotels, and that she was planning on leaving California the day after her disappearance, and that she was planning to leave via Greyhound, but she never got the chance. That's heartbreaking, too. She's like, okay, bye. And then...
Yeah. And some say that might be why something happened to her. Like they knew that she was leaving, if it's someone that she knew. So let's discuss the last sighting, how it relates to the Biltmore. On January 9th, 1947, Elizabeth, or actually Beth, she liked to be called Beth, was dropped off at the Biltmore Hotel. It was by her boyfriend at the time. She had been there several times before. And on that evening, hotel staff saw Beth making phone calls and then leave around 10 p.m. From what I understand, she told her boyfriend or guy friend that she was meeting her sister there, but her sister was never going to be there. So
interesting.
That's the disconnect of like why she told him something else and who she was calling that night. No one knows.
Yes.
The bell captain remembered her as she left the hotel, and he did mention she had left alone. I've seen in most sources. Some say that someone might have gestured her to come out, though. He either opened the door for her or he saw her out of the window as she left. And the last time she was seen, she was heading south on Olive Street. Now, there are a few rumors that she was seen one other time by a person that saw her getting into a car on the corner of 7th and Olive. So that's just a few blocks away from the hotel. But after this evening, she was never seen alive again. For those that haven't heard of this case, this is still unsolved to this day. On January 15th, 1947, in the morning, a woman named Betty was walking with her daughter in a neighborhood in Los Angeles and found the body of Elizabeth Short. She had been cut in half at the waist. Some of her intestines were found under her, There's extensive mutilations done to her body and various cuts all over the place. Pieces of her thigh and breasts were cut away. Her face had been sliced from the corners of her mouth to around her ears. And there's so much more. There's so many more gruesome details.
Yes.
The coroner ruled that she likely died about 10 to 12 hours before being found, and that she may have died due to several severe blows to her head that caused a brain hemorrhage.
I would thoroughly hope that she died before the horrible things that happened to her body.
You would hope, but she disappeared on the 9th, wasn't found on the 15th. They do think that she was tortured for a while.
Yeah.
They also had ligature marks on her wrists, ankles, and neck. Her body was found only a few feet away from the sidewalk, and at that time, it was before the houses were built in this area, so it was kind of like an open-ish field, but they had already put the sidewalks there, getting ready to build more.
Yeah.
And when Betty saw her, at first, for a quick moment, she thought that she was a mannequin because of like the way that she was posed.
I just feel like that's pretty standard because people don't, like their brains won't process what they're seeing, so they often think it's a mannequin or like a doll or something from afar.
Oh, yeah. It has to be something else, anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting fact is that there was no blood at the scene. So investigators think that she was likely killed somewhere else and then moved and placed here. Also, due to the nature of the cuts, investigators believe that the killer might have been like a doctor of some kind.
I mean, I think that that's a very fair and reasonable thing, especially in a situation where a person's exsanguinated and then when it's so clear that the body is staged.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's not just as though there's this haphazard pile of pieces. It's very purposeful in placing her together, but in this disjointed way, if you will.
Right.
And it feels terrifyingly purposeful and gross.
Yes.
So the LA Police Department led the investigation, but the FBI was asked to assist. Her body was quickly identified using her fingerprints. And luckily, her fingerprints were on file because she had applied for a job to work at the commissary at the U.S. Army's Camp Cook in California back in 1943. And then earlier, we mentioned that she had gotten in trouble for underage drinking. So her fingerprints were also on file because she had been arrested in Santa Barbara for underage drinking. So during the investigation, there were lots of twists and turns, including strange letters from someone claiming to be the killer, around 60 distinct confessions during the investigation, and around 500 confessions have been given over the years. And there's so many different theories about what happened between the last time she was seen at the Biltmore and when her body was found. The last investigator who investigated the case was Ralph Asdell, and he passed away in 2003. But even then, he was still thinking about the case. He had always hoped that someone would come forward who knew the killer and would be able to provide information to solve the case. He himself had investigated a lead that he believed to be the killer, but unfortunately the man was never pursued as a serious suspect. And this feels like I can't even imagine being a person who was investigating this for, I mean, like, how do you stop?
Right, right. Yeah, and there's an article written about him, and he was like sure that this person did it, but there's tons of people that are sure that someone that they know did it, which is really wild. There's one guy that thinks his dad did it, that wrote several books. It's a big one.
I mean, I think that we underestimate how many horrific people exist.
Yes.
And so we go, oh, I know a horrific person. They probably did this thing. And it's like, maybe they just did other horrible things. Who knows, right? Like, I know that sounds kind of flippant, but it is true that there are hundreds of active serial killers right now. And people are like, oh, this bad thing, it might be associated with them. And it's like, no, maybe they just did other bad things.
Right. Well, I know I kind of went into it. I kind of want to read this book now, but the guy who believes his dad did it wrote a book as to like why. And I believe his dad was a doctor. So it like matched a lot. But when Ralph was investigating, he believes, I think it was an entirely different person and that he like met with him at one point, but they didn't have enough evidence, I believe. There's so much going on with it. I've read about this case years ago, but even since then, I saw so many new theories when revisiting it again in just like the last couple weeks. There are so many people that have dedicated so much time to trying to solve this. And I mean, it still can be solved if someone did have someone that they knew at the time or like a great grandfather or something like that where they have evidence. It still can happen.
Yeah.
But the hotel staff showed me where the phones were used, like by her that night, and where they believe she was last seen. Like there's this little cubby with a phone.
Mm-hmm.
However, I question it just a little bit because A lot of sources say she was in the lobby using the phone, and at that time the lobby would have been somewhere else, but perhaps it might be the same phone. I don't know, because it was like an old antique phone that they have in here.
Yeah.
But they were like, yeah, that area is dedicated to her. This is where she was last seen. So interesting.
I would be very interested I think that when you're thinking of a case that's cold and that's decades and decades and decades old, I feel like the way that where you would find anything else out would be the killer's estate finding some sort of evidence after the person had died. And they're finding like letters or trophies or something like that.
Right.
So not surprisingly, there are lots of reports of paranormal activity at the Biltmore. And we've gotten several of the next stories from speaking with some of the hotel employees, some remaining anonymous, and others are from guests or online.
Yes. Not surprisingly, the first one that is often seen, of course, is Elizabeth Short. People have seen her all throughout the hotel, but in particular, she's more active on the 10th and 11th floors. That's the most common place that they see her. Some speculate that maybe she attended a party on one of those floors before leaving that evening, but I didn't see any concrete proof of this. However, she had been to the hotel several times before, so maybe she just loved that hotel. So maybe she attended one at some point. Guests have reported seeing a young woman who is pale, with black hair, wearing a sheer black or gray 1940s style dress. And this figure that they see is either entering or leaving rooms on those 2 floors or walking in the hallway. Now, she never acknowledges anyone. And some say that she looks a little frightened or like she's looking for someone. I don't know if that's true, but that night it seems like she was trying to get a hold of someone. Additionally, a man who once rode one of the elevators down to the ground floor, he said that he was in the elevator with a beautiful dark-haired woman. She got off the elevator first, and before he could see which direction she went, she was gone. Then a little while later, he saw the photo of the Black Dahlia in that gallery I talked about, and he claims that that was the same woman that was in the elevator with him.
Oh, no.
Could you imagine how your heart would feel? You're like, oh, she was so gorgeous. I don't know where she went. And then you walk down the hall and you're like, oh my gosh, that was her.
Yeah.
It still gives me chills. But I stayed on the 11th floor. And I will say the halls are a little unnerving. They seem like never ending. It just has a weird vibe. Like everything's very similar on each floor. I think the carpet color changes here and there. But it does feel like The Shining. Like you're going to like flip around one of the corners and there's going to be little girls standing there.
Come play with us.
I didn't see anything, but I definitely felt like someone was watching me from the end of the hall, no matter which end of the hall I went to. And not necessarily on the 11th floor, but many of them. On our first night that we were there, I made my husband walk every floor with me using this intense staircase, mind you. I think I sent you a little video of looking up and down the stairs.
You did?
But we went to every single floor and walked each hall because I'm like, I just want to see if anything weird happens. They're very old. They look creepy, the stairs. The elevators are fine though. But we went down every hallway. We walked each one back and forth with the exception of the second floor because when we got onto it, it's being renovated. So like it's closed off to go down the hallway, but we did step foot on the second floor.
Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first haunted place you've been since Villisca.
Yes, it is.
Did it feel, I don't want to say different, but did you feel like your experience there was different than your normal, like, I'm ghost exploring?
A little bit. Like I felt like I was going to trust myself more instead of just being like, oh, I just, it's pipes or, oh, it's this. Like if I think someone is staring at me from behind me, like someone's probably there.
Yeah. Like when you said that, I was like, that feels like an after Villisca thought, right? Like
it is.
No, I 100% feel this. I am not just making it up. No, I know it.
Yes. And like before we went, I Googled haunted hotels in Los Angeles. I will give that. I did not know the extent or any of the history before going other than it was haunted. People say it's haunted. And I saw one article saying that people have seen soldiers. There's a little bit of a giveaway, but I knew nothing else. When I was looking at pictures of it online, that's when I was like, oh, Taylor Swift did her video here.
Yeah.
And then that's when I found like, some of the movies too that were shot there. But I didn't look that up until we were there. But with that saying, like when we were walking certain floors, I'd even like tell Mike, I'm like, this floor is weird. The other one was fine. This one's weird. Or this one feels heavier. Or this one, I kept getting like flashes of anxiety. But like, I'm just walking around with my husband. Like nothing's happening. Barely anyone's there. We were there like on a Monday night.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like super busy or anything. But I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious on this floor. I don't like it. But before I'd be like, oh, it's because, we're going down staircases. We're not supposed to be here,
Or I'm excited and
Yeah.
it's feeling like anxiety. No, I was just
Exactly.
curious because I was like, it's an interesting thing to like look at those type of activities now, because before Villisca and after Villisca are two separate people,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But no, I did trust myself a lot more. And if it did start getting like too weird, I would have been like, okay, let's move on. It's fine.
I love that for you.
So going back to Elizabeth Short, one woman believes that she caught Beth in a selfie that she took down one of the halls. And we'll post that too, because it's a little weird. I think she was just like messing around and she was going to send, I think her kid or something, a picture of what the hallway looked like with her. And I don't know how to explain what's behind her. It looks very weird.
I'm a little reticent to believe that's what it is, because the look on her face is that she sees that person, right? Like she doesn't look like she's taking a selfie. It looks like she's like, what the fuck is behind me? Now, maybe she saw herself in the camera and was like, what's that thing that I don't see with my eyes in person?
Well, she knew it was haunted and she was like, here's this like spooky hotel. But she didn't see it supposedly till after. What do you think's back there? What does that look like to you? It looks like a person to me.
It looks like a person, but it doesn't look like an alive person.
Like a real person. Yeah, yeah.
And there is also, quite notably, a darkness that appears to be red in the center where their abdomen would be. It looks bloody.
It does. It looks, like a wound.
Yeah.
It's creepy. It is a weird picture, but we'll post it.
It gives me chills to look at it.
It does. It does. So additionally, some of the bartenders at that bar have claimed that they've seen apparitions passing behind them when no one else is there. And they also say that it's Elizabeth Short. I don't know why. Maybe it's like gives off like a female presence. I'm not sure, but supposedly she likes that bar area.
I would also venture to guess you've seen the photo, right? Like you're like, that's who I'm seeing out of the corner of my eye. I also love like a solid, this is what I'm seeing,
Yes. Yes.
Love that trust in yourself. So some of the guests have reported hearing people speaking in voices with a 1940s transatlantic accent in the rooms next to them, but then they later find out that the room was actually empty. Actually, it's just me trying to do any accent.
That's all I thought of.
And I'm next door just fucking fumbling and always just reverting back to the strangest transatlantic accent that you've ever heard.
It's my favorite, though.
So the 11th floor seems to have a lot of reported encounters. When speaking to an employee, they mentioned to Amanda that while they were up there, a dead space area door opened by itself. And of course, Amanda was like, what the fuck is a dead space? Probably not like that. And they said it's an industry word for an area that's not being used in the hotel, or it's a storage area. Okay, interesting.
Right? I was like, oh, now I like working a hotel. I know the lingo.
Dead space lingo. I do like knowing lingo of an industry that I am not in. I enjoy that.
Yes.
And then they also said that when they were walking in that hall, the door just flung open by itself.
Now, if it was one of like the storage areas or perhaps like the cleaning areas, like where they keep their stuff, I believe all of those are locked and they have these little fancy doorknobs with like a bee on it, like very pretty with, think of like skeleton key looking. Loved them. They're so cute. Did I try all of them? Absolutely, I did. They were all locked. So if it flung open.
In our outline, it has, don't ask me how I know that. And I was like, in my head, I was like, well, I'm absolutely going to ask how you know that.
Oh, yeah. I definitely tried all of them because they were so cool. Like the little doorknobs were so pretty.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to see how this looks.
Also, you're curious.
Oh, yeah.
Walking around. Maybe there's like a lounge up there that you were reasonably believed you had access to.
I did have a club level whatever. So if there was
fancy.
one, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But I was on the top floor, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Nice view.
So that same employee mentioned that sometimes they are asked to go shut the windows or help out with other departments when they're super busy. And once they went to the 11th floor to close a window. So, we've talked about this before in other episodes that typically hotels don't let you open the windows because people will do sad things then. But these windows open just a little bit. So he came in, closed it, then he left and he came back in again and the window was open again. But no one else had gone into the room.
That weird?
Yeah. Then on the same floor, they've also heard voices when no one was around and the lights will go out. And that's apparently relatively common, which okay, yes. Can you chalk that up to like weird electrical issues? Probably. But it's still unnerving. I have the lights that I can control with my phone.
Yes.
And I'll often set a timer for like 15 minutes. I used to do this because but inevitably I would forget that I set the timer and the lights would go out and I would go like as though I wasn't the one that did it. So like even like lights going out like that would freak me out just by itself.
Yes, for sure. And this is the employee that chose to be anonymous. But when I was talking to them, they were like, yeah, that's not an uncommon thing for me to be called to go, hey, this person just checked out. Will you go check the room, make sure everything's closed up? You know, it's raining. We don't have time to get to it till later. So they will go up there and then have to go back for whatever reason, or if they left something in the room. And they're like, yeah, often rooms aren't the way I left it. Or as I'm walking down the hall, the light just turned off. But when I went back up there, it's fine. So just interesting.
Yeah.
So on the 10th floor, some guests have seen a little boy running around. And additionally, some people have reported seeing a young girl on the 9th floor and a faceless boy on the roof. I don't know who the hell's going up on the roof.
Faceless? No, please.
Right? Oh, gosh.
No, please. No, thank you. I forgot how to fucking speak. No, please. I'm begging. Please have a face if you're going to be a ghost.
Is that who you want the facial massage from? The faceless boy?
Oh, yeah. That stresses me out. It stresses me out them not having a face.
It does. It really does.
I'm actively stressed by it.
One of the employees that I talked to mentioned that they have been called to certain floors, but they didn't specify which floor because of people complaining about children running and playing. And in particular, one story I heard is the guest mentioned that when the kid turned the corner, they were gone. So they suspected they were in, one of those rooms over there in that like block area. And so when this person, the employee, went up there to see what was going on, there was no children. They didn't hear children. They didn't see any children, nothing. So they went back downstairs, talked to, I believe, like the front desk or something to see like which room are children staying in. There was no evidence or record of anyone staying in that area of that floor at the time. So like the guest was like, no, they turned that corner. The kids went that way. Where could they have gone?
Also, the year is 2024. People are not letting their children generally run around a hotel unsupervised. I just feel like it's less common than it once was.
Right.
And also just, you need to be watching and ingesting more paranormal content because if you hear children, just assume, I'm just going to assume it's a ghost.
Probably. Right. Well, and it's Los Angeles. You're not going to let your kids just run around wherever they want to go.
But yeah, I'm just like, it's a fancy hotel. I can't imagine people are like, I should bring my kids here to run around and cause havoc in this place with lots of breakables.
Right.
But anyway, we mentioned that the second floor had been where the soldiers were staying in the 1940s. Shocker. Amanda kind of alluded to it earlier, but there have been sightings of soldiers and nurses in the hotel, especially on the floor where they have been staying, the second floor. A guest once reported that when they were waking up while they were staying on the second floor, they saw a glowing woman at the foot of their bed. We don't like it, do we? No.
Nope.
She was dressed as a nurse from the 1940s, and they shook the foot of the bed that they were in as if they were trying to wake them up. And then they just turned around and walked through the wall.
My job is done.
Yeah. Like, wakey, wakey. Like, you requested a wake-up call. This is it. We offer ghost massages and ghost wake-up calls. They'll shake the foot of your fucking bed. Whoof. So the same woman has been seen walking the hallway of the second floor as well. When Amanda asked one of the employees about the second floor, they said that the first time they had gone to that floor, it felt quote unquote weird, but there's been renovations. And ever since that, the weirdness has kind of gone away and the energy's changed.
Yes. Yeah. The way that they described it, they're like, when I first started working here, the second floor I did not like. Like it felt weird. Just something was up. But now that they've been working on it so much, whatever changed, fixed it. I was like, that's interesting because normally it's the opposite.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I would also wonder if they grew accustomed to the weirdness because sometimes that is the case. It stops feeling so strange to you, especially if you've never encountered that energy. So you just kind of get used to it.
Right. And when I asked that same employee, well, what's the spookiest area of the hotel? They said, without even thinking, the storage area. And I was like, ooh, tell me more.
Of course, right? The place where they have to go all the fucking time.
Right. So they mentioned that the storage area is in the lower part of the hotel, but couldn't tell me exactly where it was. But the way they described it is it holds all of the hotel's relics, is the word that they used. They believe that some of the original furniture and items from the hotel's opening is there.
Super fucking haunted.
And when they've had to go down there, they always feel like they're not alone. But since being there a while, they mentioned that the hauntings don't really bother them anymore and that they all just need to coexist. But their outlook was great. They were like, it was weird at first. It was really creepy. And now I'm just like, I work with them. It's fine.
I do feel like when you can get used to an entity being in your presence and you can understand that, like, whatever the reason for being there isn't malicious, it feels a bit different, aka margini.
Right. Another thing that we kind of talked about, we like touched on, is they're renovating the second floor, right? And they said it was weird at first, but now it's not. My theory is, what if they moved whatever it was down to the storage area? Like maybe it's attached to something and now it's in the storage area hanging out there.
I don't know. I guess I've never thought of haunted objects as being, you have to be within 100 feet of the object. It's in the structure. It can move around, you know? But I don't know the range of a ghost, of a haunted chair, if you will.
That's true. But maybe if they took everything from that room and moved it down into this like storage area where apparently it's huge. Like they have a bunch of stuff from like opening, but maybe like the room almost moved, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it could also be that the ghost was like, what's this? I've never been here before. So they're just haunting a different place at the moment.
Oh, let's socialize.
Yeah.
With these ones.
Like, oh.
So let's move to the 6th floor. A guest reported seeing black mirages walking around the hall. Don't like that. I think of like House on Haunted Hill, where like, I think it's at the end where it's just like this big cluster of nonsense. I feel like that's like walking down the hall. But additionally, they believe they saw a woman in black walk into their closet, which I thought was interesting.
That's her closet now.
It is.
That's her pants.
They mentioned that they didn't know the history of the hotel before checking in, but they had an unsettling feeling during their stay. And it's probably because like there's a woman in their closet.
You think? They're like, how was your stay? Honestly, a little bit unsettling because the woman that went into my closet.
They're like, don't mind her.
Yeah. They're like, oh, that's I can't think of any name. That's Amanda.
Yep.
She's chilling. I mean, you are often wearing black.
Going through their closet, seeing if they have any new black clothes.
Perfect. You're like, these are kind of faded. Can you, because I've been in the Arizona sun. Do you have anything like a fresher black?
Yeah, that's all. Just need to update my wardrobe.
Yeah. How else would you?
No idea.
So another guest who was staying in a 2-room suite mentioned that they had several strange occurrences happen while they were staying at the hotel. They didn't specify what room, but they said that the TV turned on by itself the first night they stayed there. Then on the second night, they heard flute music. Okay, Lizzo's there. And then they heard what sounded like a party going on. Again, it's Lizzo with her flute. But when they went to investigate, they didn't hear any sound from the hallway or the street below. They just heard it in their room. So they also mentioned that the TV, it kept turning on and off. And they were like, enough of this. So they just unplugged it. But then in the middle of the night, it turned on again. I don't like it. I don't like that at all. Like when you're like, okay, enough of this. And it's like, I'm not done. Get fucked.
All I think of is like the Furbies turning on without batteries. You know, like that's what's happening.
Yes. I mean, of course. So another spooky experience was reported by a historical journalist named Hadley Mears. Mears was staying there with her parents in a suite when they came to visit her in Los Angeles. And the night that they stayed there, it was raining. So around 11 p.m., they all went to sleep. And then she woke up. She says that she had very loud thoughts inside her head. Girl, same. The weirdest part was that she said that they weren't her thoughts. She described them as having the voice, cadence, and vocabulary not being her own. So like that transatlantic accent, right? Like imagine you just hear like a British man speaking in your fucking head or something, right? Like that would be jarring.
Yes.
She thought it to be an angry, vengeful man from another time and place. When she paints the picture of who would have owned the voice inside her head, she describes the owner as being a sweaty, haggard, middle-aged man from the 1940s, hunched at the hotel bar, spewing disgusting vulgarities, his humanity blotted out by his rage. And she said the thoughts themselves came quickly and were strange and hateful and violent. And I just want to point out that, like, that's an incredibly descriptive picture that she's pointing out. And that sounds like perhaps she is actually, like, seeing him in her head. You know, like, she's like,
right.
The image is so spot on because that's so specific.
Yes. And of course, like she woke up to this and she's like, it wasn't my typical thoughts of like my schedule or what's going to happen tomorrow. It was this and it was heavy. And so when she tried to sit up, she couldn't move. And it felt like someone's forearms were holding her down at her chest. and that something was taking over her. She said it definitely wasn't sleep paralysis, though, because she had experienced that before, and it was very different.
Well, also sleep paralysis isn't accompanied by somebody else's voice in your head.
Yes.
And it's typically like, it doesn't feel like part of you is being held down. It's like you just can't move generally.
Right. And I'm sure some people, though, that have heard of is like, oh, it's just sleep paralysis. You were fine.
I'm sure.
And she's like, no. I've had that. That's different. But then all of a sudden, the TV turned on and she could hear the announcer from like a sports thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, as she's listening to the announcer, she felt like herself again. She could like think, oh, I'm hearing the announcer. I'm hearing about this game.
Uh-huh.
And of course, because they're all together, the TV woke her parents up. And they asked, like, did you just turn on the TV? Like, we're trying to sleep. She's like, no.
No, I couldn't because the strange angry man in my head wouldn't let me sit up.
Yeah. So she says no. And then her parents kind of laughed it off and they're like, oh, haha, it's probably a ghost. Also, it was 3 a.m. at this point. So her dad gets up, he turns off the TV, and they all go back to bed. Hadley said that it had felt like she engaged in a monumental fight. And so she was just exhausted.
I bet. But like, I don't think I could have slept. I would have been like,
It's going to happen again.
I'm up now, baby.
Right? So apparently she woke up a few times more that night, but nothing else happened. And the next morning, she could remember how she felt, but could not remember the exact thoughts that she had inside her head during the experience.
Ooh, interesting.
So that morning, she told her parents what had happened, and she was like, I'm not staying here again tonight. Like, I'm going home. So instead, each night, as her parents were there, she didn't say how many nights they were there. She went home while they still stayed in the room.
I love that. She's like, you guys can stay in the haunted hotel. I'm going to my
Peace.
apartment or wherever I live.
Yeah. Weirdly, her parents told her that the TV did turn on again at 3 a.m. each night they were there, but nothing else happened. I guess they messed around with the TV thinking like, oh, it must be on a timer or something, but they couldn't find any sort of timer or anything wrong with it.
What a funny thing to do to a hotel TV before you leave and check out. If you just set a timer so it went on in the middle of the night. That's a little hilarious.
I don't know if that exists. Like, I know timers to turn off.
Is there a timer on?
Yeah. I mean, unless it was like a smart switch type situation, but like,
yeah,
you would notice that.
Yeah.
So after her parents left, she dug into the history of the hotel, trying to figure out who the spirit was. And she couldn't find anything specifically, but she did say that the experience gave her a new perspective and a new healthy fear of things that go bump in the night.
Dude, fair.
Right? I'm like, I get you. I understand you.
Heard.
And thinking about my stay there, we had a lot of trouble with our TV. And so it would randomly lose connection. Like, it would be playing, it would lose connection to cable, and then it would just get stuck on this weird screen. And it kept happening. And so my husband's very techie. So he got up, he fiddled with it for like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, got it to work again, and then it happened again. And so he was like, maybe it's just like the box, not necessarily the TV, but like the cable box that hotel TVs are normally like attached to.
Yeah.
So we called maintenance and we're like, hey, this is happening, because like, not that we're watching a ton of TV, but I like the TV on when I'm at a haunted hotel so that like I don't wake up to other things. I'd rather wake up to the TV.
Well, and also this way you're not like hearing every sound of the hotel being like, what's that? Because it's reasonable that there will be other people's sounds at a hotel.
Yes, exactly. So maintenance came up, they fixed it, they left. And then in the middle of the night, it happened again. So I don't know if it was an old cable box or maybe it was a ghost that just didn't like me watching TV, but it did happen a lot. Very weird. But I do recommend everyone go stay at this hotel, or at least like go and explore it.
It definitely sounds like a place that is haunted. Do you? I mean, I'm assuming that you think it's haunted, given the vibes you felt and the feeling of being watched.
Yeah, like, I don't know by who, but I do feel like there's people still in the hallways. They want to know what's going on. I don't think it was like threatening. Like, it was no Velisca. I just think they were more curious. Like, who are you? What are you doing? That sort of vibe.
Also, like, if you get to pick where you're haunting, wouldn't you pick a place that's beautiful and stunning that you enjoyed in your life? Like, it's completely possible that some of the things that are there because they're like, this place fucking rocked. I want to stay there. And not because some terrible thing happened, just because they're like, yeah, that's the place I want to be. I don't want to move on, but I do want to stay there.
Exactly. Yeah, and especially if they had like parties, the tea parties, the fashion shows, the movies that were filmed. There's a lot of good in the hotel too.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me. I absolutely would stay there. Sounds lovely.
Yeah, I can't wait to go.
Do you want to go back? I'm assuming you do. It sounded like,
yeah.
I think you already said you did.
Oh yeah, I want to go back. You should go with me. We should stay a few more nights and make more friends at the hotel so we can learn more.
Perfect. and bring all of our little, I say all of our, like I also have ghost hunting tools. It's all just Amanda right now. But bring those types of things too. That'd be fun.
Yes. I did turn on the Necrophonic app for a few minutes in the middle of the night. We were downstairs by the hall that has like all the historic pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And at first it was gibberish, and then it said a couple strange things. I can't remember exactly what words it used, but it did like catch my attention because I was trying to explain to Mike. I was like, oh, here's how it works. I turned off, Wi-Fi, turned everything off, turned it on, and it was just nonsense at first. And then all of a sudden, for a couple seconds, it started talking, and then people turned the corner and it stopped again. And I was like, that's interesting.
Like, that is interesting.
That it was going on for a second and then it just stopped.
Like it got shy.
I didn't record or anything because I was just playing around with it. It was like 2 a.m., but interesting.
Oh, for sure. For sure. In case you don't know, Amanda and I love talking about spooky places that we could visit. So if there's a spooky place that you've been to, we want to know about it.
Yes, please.
And speaking of, we are coming up on our Podiversary episode that comes out in the beginning of October. And one of the things that we love to have is listener stories. So tell us your haunted vacation stories. We want to fucking know them. Also, we won't shut up about like perhaps what our intuition is picking up on. So one of the things that I also like specifically want this year, I mean, and always, is I want your weird intuition. I want to know what you knew, but you had no reason to know.
Yes.
The thing that you were right about against all odds. That I want to know. I want intuition stories. I want your spooky travel bucket list, but also where you've been. I want all of it.
All of it, yes. And if you go to our website, there's a place that says submit your story.
Mm-hmm.
So head there. It'll give you all the instructions on what to do.
Yes, yes. And as a note, we also have the Bat Bonfire, our free Facebook group that exists. So you can also add stuff there if you want to have conversations with other people who are also spooky minded. And for our Patreons, we have our Patreon only Discord. If you are loving the show and want to support it, there's a few different ways you can support. First is always, we'll forever say this, is leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. If you take a screenshot of it and send us that plus your mailing address, we will send you a sticker. You can also support us via Patreon. We have a whole bunch of different tiers. They start at just $1, but it helps us get better equipment and be able to go do investigations here and there a bit.
Yeah.
And also, you can just engage with the stuff that exists on the internet because it makes the algorithm incredibly happy.
It does.
But I cannot stress enough how much we want to put your stories into our Podiversary episode.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, mine too. You can send them as a voice recording where you just tell us all about it, or you can send us a written version and we'll read it as you in the show.
Yes. And you can be anonymous too if you don't want to say your name. That's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even if your email address like has your name attached to it, we're not going to be like, don't care if they said they're anonymous.
No, we won't keep you anonymous.
If you want to be anonymous, you are, baby.
Yes.
Well, with that, have a great weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us.
Thanks for listening. And as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon.
Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch.
Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store.
We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts.
I beg of you. One of the first things that like really ruined me about Arizona was when I was like, just take a cold shower. And Amanda was like, the water comes out of the pipes hot.
Yes.
It broke my brain. I was like, that's an uninhabitable place. Like, I give up. Like, there's just no like reconciling that.
There's
in
no
my head.
relief. There's no relief. Yeah. I was explaining it to someone last night, actually, that they didn't bury our pipes deep enough, I guess, in the ground for our city.
Mm-hmm.
So during the summer, our coldest water sometimes is like 100 degrees. And so because my hair is so bright, I can't wash my hair till 3 a.m. So I have to stay up to wash my hair in water that won't kill it.
Theoretically, you could, when it's on sale, get like a big water thing and keep it like on your counter or on your fridge. If you wanted to not do that.
I mean, just like a normal human shower, you know?
No, you don't get to shower like a normal human being. No, here's what you do. You get a cheesecloth, step 1. Then you're going to put ice cubes in it.
They melt within a second.
And then have a bucket next to the... Yeah, no, but you have to get a bucket to put next to replenish them. And then put that around your shower head and then do it.
Got it. Okay.
Or better yet, like if you have one of the things with the handle, put like the tube in the ice so it cools as it goes. Surely somebody has to have a cooling shower head for this life you live.
Hell yeah. We'll find it one day. But yeah, my favorite thing is when people move into our area and they'll post on like our neighborhood Facebook group, does anyone have any issues with getting their cold water to work? And then everyone just laughs at them.
They're like, ha ha ha. Joke's on
Welcome
you.
to hell. Yeah, it's a hellscape. It really
As I
is.
like make a mental note for Christmas. What an excellent gift if it exists. And it opened in Los Angeles, as we said. Already fucking it up. End of episode fodder. Perfect.
One of my favorite videos to watch lately online is when people incorporate their dogs into their wedding, right?
Mhm.
Normally very cute. But I love when it goes wrong. And like, there's this one with a corgi walking down and it's so cute. It's all ready. It's doing its thing. But then it like looks over at a guest and just attacks the guest. Doesn't hurt them. But then
It's like,
the
fuck
groom has to
you.
run over and grab the dog. And I just love that because that is totally a corgi thing. Like they're doing something and then they're like, oh wait, fuck you. Love it.
I did debate whether to have like Moo present, but I was like, our venue was like 45 minutes from our house. And I was like, there's no one that
Same.
who could like take her to and from. And I think it would have stressed her out and it would have stressed me out and she would have jumped on me and had a lacy dress and like it would have been a whole thing.
Same. Yeah, we wanted to do the same thing, but we were about 55 minutes away. And I'm like, I could hire someone to just be like a dog butler. But then like, do I want to spend that much money on a dog butler?
I was like, of all the things I want to stress about, I just don't want to add that to it. And also like our ceremony was indoors. So like, what if she had to get to the bathroom, you know? And I'm like, nope, you're marching down the aisle, baby. And the hotel hosted several, the hotel also, you know me, can't fucking speak, 2 weeks off and I forgot everything. Because she had applied for a job as a clerk at the commissary of the U.S. Army Corps, at the U.S. Army camp. Oh my gosh, okay. At the commissary of the U.S. Army camp's cook in Okay. Army's camp cook was doing a thing in my head.
Yeah.
So luckily her fingerprints were on file because she had applied for a job as a clerk at the commissary at the U.S. Army camp's cook. Oh my God. In the U.S. Oh my gosh. To work at the commissary at the U.S. Army's Camp Cook in California back in 1943. Holy fuck, I fucking did it.
You did it.
Jesus.
Took her like
So,
times. I've done that so many
right?
times.
Or I'm like, the words, I'm like, I just can't get the cadence right. And I know I can.
Hallie's now snoring, by the way.
Perfect. A cacophony of sounds. Bam! I'm a history scientist now, baby.